My fellow Ambazonians, this is Dr. Ayaba. Happy Country Sunday, day of collective resistance and collective rejection of Cameroon's colonialism, occupation, and genocide in Ambazonia. I salute our brave people on ground zero and across the globe. And I want to thank you all for your continuous investment in the freedom of our country. My fellow countrymen and women, I want to come out today to speak about a series of issues of great importance to our struggle. We must have noticed massive mobilization, attacks by La République du Cameroon on our forces in different states. There are two reasons. I would not go detailing into them. One is as a result of the ongoing transition, discussions about transition in Yaoundé. They foresee chaos and they foresee instability. But their greater worry is Ambazonia. And so their objective is to suppress the resistance and reduce it to as minimum as possible so that they can focus on any instability that might ensue during the transition. They don't want to fight on two fronts. We are monitoring the situation carefully. We are monitoring their movement of forces, especially in Mezam, in Momo. We are aware this morning and last week, a sizable amount of Cameroon forces entered Chomba, all in civilian. And we ask our population to be vigilant. And we thank our forces there for the resistance, brave fight. We are also aware of the fight in Momo. We can now revise the number of deaths on the site of Cameroon. 7 killed, 4 are critically wounded and we expect them to die, and 12 were also wounded. Our own deaths remain as announced, and we have wounded who are also receiving treatment and improving. I will not go more into that. The second reason is associated with background discussions between different international stake actors to ensure that should there be a transition, any regime that steps forward should prioritize discussion. And they want to enter that discussion from a position of strength. That is why you see the military actions within Ambazonia. But we are strong, we are resilient. Our forces are highly coordinated and monitor the traffic on an hourly basis. They are upbeat despite the loss we had in the great state of Momo. Our forces are defiant and confident. We also know, based on La République's publication, that the specific objective of specific operations are defined based on what they know, what is going on. And as they themselves stated on the attack in Momo, they were trying to slow our momentum. The statement of the Supreme General of the Ambazonian Defense Forces is a reflection of the policy of the organization. 5 years into our war, while we will maintain peripheral forces for thin distribution of the enemy, it is critical that we are in a position to hold, defend, and protect territory, states, and peoples. And this objective, we will pursue it vigorously. I ask Ambazonians across the territory to remain vigilant and to know that this is not a struggle and fight for the forces alone. This is a collective struggle, and resistance must be across the territory. You must be able to report any suspicious activities of the enemy. Make sure you do not collaborate with the enemy, and make sure you make life as brutish and hellish as possible for any enemy force that gets into your own block. We know through operations that La République has gained a lot of support from our own citizens, those who have been recruited long term and those who are coerced through threat to provide them with routes of access and access areas with least obstacle as possible. We are monitoring the situation on the ground, but I can say with confidence that our forces are up to the task. The enemy is weak, demoralized, without leadership and without a cause. And this is our land. And as I've said before, we will protect it with all what we have. My fellow countrymen and women, I have said in the past week that we must understand what we fight for. And if you do not initially define what you fight for, you would engage in several battles and fights that are irrelevant. And that explains to a certain extent the proliferation of micro groups engaged in peripheral activities, totally divorced from the what we fight for question. What do we fight for? We fight for the territory of Ambazonia. To liberate the land is the principal reason why we fight. In that process, we will institute measures that will inconvenience our population. I hear some people say, oh, we must put our people first. Our people remains our priority, but that is not the principal objective. Our people are held captive by an occupation regime that controls the land. If we do not free the land, the people will remain captive forever. You can never make a prisoner free while keeping the prisoner in prison. Liberate and destroy the prison, and then you can now institute practices that gives opportunities to our people. The second issue I would like to talk about, so you can understand why most of the times you hear of proliferation of groups here and there. Historically, liberation struggles is the fear of ideologues, strong ideological individuals and groups, is the fear of intellectuals who generate the idea of resistance because they've been either reading a lot of other struggles, lecturers in university studied different forms of ideology, and you have students too who've been engaged in radical student activities and move from there to building platforms for greater political ambition. You also have ordinary citizens who are part and parcel of ideological groups in different countries. You found Marxist groups that, found their way in universities, in neighborhoods, cells were built, and communities became ideologically empowered, and they fight to free countries so that they can create systems and institutions that is a reflection of the particular ideology they subscribe to. That is unlike the Ambazonian struggle. There is a very narrow niche of an ideological foundation. The struggle is awash with opportunists who find the struggle as a means of making money, as a means of temporal fame, as a means of social gathering, networking, and whatsoever. The activism and activities is totally void of any ideological underpinnings. And that creates lack of discipline, lack of focus, weakened conviction, and moving in every direction. The third or fourth issue I'd like to talk about is the statement made by what the spokesperson of the AGOC described as the first slave from Ambazonia, Mr. Ngote. I am not talking about this within the context of what he said, but I want to push it further. Ngote gave an analysis which we've given before, explaining the uptick in production, CDC, and the uptick in income being generated by activities of the CDC. Recall that one of our principal strategy was economic sabotage, to undermine the ability of the enemy to make money and to use our industries as collateral to borrow money. We were very successful until the notion of tribalism stepped in and transformed fighters into business people and undermine through corruption, as we are all aware, our ability to weaken the enemy's ability to make money out of our country. Mr. Ngote said this uptick in activities is a good sign. For them, the income they generate is not important. For them, the uptick and income and activity is what is important for them, a perceived return to normalcy. Normalcy for an occupying regime is critical for its international reputation, for its what they call instruments of control, governmentality, because once there is chaos, it shows to the international system that you lack control and command, and so you cannot claim to exercise control over territory or areas under your jurisdiction. And so Ngote was pushing this to show you people that there is a return to normalcy, to show their investors who pride stability for purposes of investment, that there is a return to that level of stability that could provide a level of investment for the survival of the state. Secondly, that there is that return to normalcy and stability that makes your companies become important collateral for their international borrowing expeditions. I'm saying this to also talk about education. When La Republique says people should go back to school, it's not about education they are talking about. They are talking about a return to normalcy, because they have a perception that a return to school is going to be a return to normalcy. They have a perception that by creating DDR center and putting a few soldiers inside, they can market the idea of a return to normalcy, which is important to international creditors and their image internationally. They have never been interested in your education. They have never been interested in your economy. They have been interested in creating an environment through which extortion, impunity, and occupation without reciprocation in development can be the normal. And I really want to caution all those groups. I'm aware that the CDN is going around in different groups and try to market the international idea of a return to school. This is a very dangerous trajectory, and the CDN should not become the new HD within Ambazonia to be advancing the interests of the international community at the expense of Ambazonia, and an interest which the regime would then use to market a so-called return to normalcy and give a sense of that sense of normalcy weakens the ability of our forces to perceive the territory as a war zone. We have, through effort, begun to create community education that is overseen by community, controlled by community, and supported by the community. That sense of ownership in a struggle for independence is critical. We might still be limping, but every sprinter began with a crawl, then stumbling in walking, and then started to walk before becoming a sprinter. If we insist on landing a man on the moon without knowing how to scale Mount Boya, we are going to remain enslaved for the rest of our lives. if we do not admit a season of suffering, real suffering, we will never be free. Ambazonians like shortcuts to glory, shortcuts to hopelessness, shortcuts to survival in the name of living. We must be ready to endure like other peoples. South Africa took close to 75 years. The Palestinians have been resisting for more than 50. They have a country, but they think the 1967 border is the border. And without Israel accepting that, they prefer to continuously resist. If it was Ambazonians, would have just said, oh, just let it go. Just let it go. You will never have what you deserve until you are ready to give your life for it, so that the next generation can enjoy. Independence means independence. Those who have died for a freed homeland. We have provided a clear-cut policy to the international community that we are flexible. We are flexible with the issue of education. In areas of Ambazonian forces control, it must be Ambazonian education. In areas of La Republique's control, we can have a discussion. They can institute their La Republique GCE whatsoever in those minimal areas. In contested areas, we are willing to have discussion on access to education. But we cannot surrender to the enemy our curriculum. We cannot undermine the call made by the TASAN for an educational system that is worth its name, in the name of pushing an agenda written by the international community. The international community is interested like La Republique in stability. It is not interested in your freedom. Those who do its bidding, those who went with the HD have seen the damage that HD caused and is still causing. And we want any Ambazonian organization pushing those agenda that it is a matter of time for you to unravel. I think HD has learned this critically. My fellow people, we cannot entertain any cosmetic approaches to working together. We cannot entertain shortcuts on difficult issues that concerns the prosecution of our liberation struggle. Everything we do or we want to do, we must invest time, effort, and knowledge to do it well, and with honesty and in good faith. If it fails, we will know we did our best. We will know we made the requisite investment. If we take shortcuts and we fail, we will regret. We will say to ourselves, oh, maybe if we invested more time, maybe if we were honest, maybe if we acted in good faith. We will lose battles in this struggle. We will lose many battles. But if we lose those battles, because we engage in them in good faith, we will not regret, even if we lose people. The past 5 years has been a difficult one for Ambazonia, faced by the challenge of the creation of an interim government. We will not oppose people who just get up and set up their government, but to hijack a multilateral platform, a multi-party, a multi-movement platform, and transform it into a government, and insist in propaganda, hate, blackmail, and everything, that it is one and only, no multiplicity, was a monumental mistake. And we should never repeat that mistake. We have seen the splintering of the IG. The 3 IGs have become a shadow of themselves. I can basically declare them dead. Sako is gone. Chris Ano is struggling to manage what they have created there. It's not going to work. The IGK is now engaged in some experiments in different states. It doesn't work. They are now a shadow of themselves. And I think this gives us an opportunity to look back and look at the mistakes we made and see how we can come together and work together. In the interim, the surviving movement will continue to push our struggle forward by strengthening our ideology, educating our people on the task ahead, and telling them the truth about what price we will need to pay to defeat La République battle by battle. We should not entertain opportunism. We should never. I could have unilaterally declared myself the single leader in the struggle. I hold back all the time because there are two ways that you lead a struggle. Just two. It is institutional, based on a collective acceptance of the main actors in that struggle. You become an institutional leader. That's what the Eritreans had. Or you become a functional leader based on your activities. And even at that level, you must be very cautious, because in the era of social media, two or three persons gathered anywhere can undermine that functionality. We had functional leadership in Sri Lanka with the Tamil Tigers. We are hearing a lot about a group of persons sitting in Kondengi and creating different machinations, trying as hard as possible to recreate the system of chaos that has kept us backward in the past 5 years. They should stop, because you are going nowhere. We will have to sit down and work out a mechanism, a model of collaboration. We cannot be opportunistic. People run here. They hear 10 Kobo rises up one day. All of them. They hear no pity rises up one day. All of them. They hear the other time it was Ara. They all went in drove. Another time it was the SWAT. They went in drove. It was the AMF which appeared, and it was the new kid in the block. In liberation struggle, that is not allowed. When people emerge, provide them your support, morally, financially, and otherwise. And understand what they stand for, what they are pushing. And maybe they become efficient. If you attempt to crown people who emerge, they become the new tyrant in the block. You will never be able to take them down. That is what the Funchas and the Munas learned in 1966 with Ayijo. That is what we learned in Zaria. That we are moved by our emotions. In liberation struggle, emotions matter, but they are not predominant. My fellow people, your country is in your hands. It will be you, no longer La République, the Brits, the French, or the United Nations to mar it. It will be you. La République has infiltrated many sectors of our community and using slaves to undermine the credibility of our resistance. Ambazonia has produced the most flamboyant traitors whose sole responsibility is to strengthen the enemy. But we are a grassroots resistance, and we've prevailed over them, over 5 countries for 143 years. In 5 years, we've reduced La République to a laughingstock internationally and domestically. We will mop the last remnants of their presence. It will be the most difficult mopping. We are bound to do it because there is no backward going. We must only stir forward like people determined to take down this enemy that has made our lives miserable for the past 60 years. God bless you all.